Hello, college football fans. Welcome to the latest edition of Urban's Take, featuring three-time national championship winning coach Urban Meyer with yours truly, Tim May. And Urban, let's just get right to it, man. I think big noon kickoff with Fox is headed back to the Horseshoe, isn't it, to Ohio Stadium this weekend. You guys are kind of jumping on that wagon now that Ohio State's still number 2 in the latest college football playoff rankings. I know you're not jumping on any wagon. You helped build that wagon. But what's the intrigue coming to Columbus this week?
Not a lot, other than a great football team against a team that's really struggling. But right now, there weren't a lot of great games. And obviously the Horseshoe and Ohio State has a chance to, they need a statement game. And Indiana's going to be on the other side of that. We almost went to Ann Arbor, and that would have been our third time there. And I might pull a hamstring for that one, that I might have to tap out of that one. But we had a really good trip down to TCU. First time I was ever there. What an incredible place.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm not just talking about the university, Fort Worth, Texas, the fans. That's one of the cool things about this job. You get to go to some really interesting places, but there's nothing like going back home. And, I understand it's going to be a little colder or cool. And, Ohio State's got to keep pushing. But the bottom line is they're undefeated. They're a loaded team. And obviously this is another opportunity to get better we all know what's coming down the road.
I want to ask you this. You were the head coach of Florida in 2006. And we were sitting here all season in 2006 watching these two trains coming down the track at each other, or as I call them, these two major super oil tankers coming down the Suez Canal at each other. And it finally happened. The game of the century, at least the first game of the century of the 2000s, Ohio State versus Michigan, undefeated. And we're looking at a similar dynamic. I mean, I know as a coach, for sure, you're taught not to look ahead, but as an analyst, as a TV guy now, you see this coming down the track, don't you?
Yeah, this will be, you have a good year or bad year, and that's the way I guess I always grew up in that. And I imagine you did too. But you're a Southerner, but I was from Ohio with Woody against Bo, and it was, you can lose or win all the rest of the games. It's going to come down to this game.
Yeah.
And you know what, Tim, it always should. I don't care what the records are. I get real defensive of that rivalry for a lot of reasons because I grew up in it. The respect I have for both programs and the way I grew up, that was the way it was. So these are two not good teams, really good teams. I think the Wolverines are really good. I think their line of scrimmage on both sides, that catches my eye. Their center is a great player. The offensive line is really well coached, and they come off the ball, and on defense, they're just getting better and better. They lose two first-round draft picks at defensive end, and I had one of the league coaches tell me they're better this year than they were last year.
Yeah. That's what a lot of people think. Let's get right into I was going to jump ahead, but let's get right into my discussion about the Wolverines. You just touched on them, but also Ohio State. The wind was blowing 30 to 50 miles an hour on this past Saturday at Northwestern. The Ohio State Air Force should have been grounded, but Ryan, they still threw 26 passes, only completed 10, but you saw CJ Stroud run the ball seriously for the first time this year and really helped him kind of shake the doldrums to a certain extent in the running game. But no matter how you do it, they got the job done 21-7. But as you look at Ohio State and that running game, when they turned to it last week, it was a little bit bulky. They still ran for more than 200 yards. They still got all 3 touchdowns running the ball, but everybody in Columbus is all a Twitter, so to speak, about Ohio State's run game and maybe about its run defense based on the way Northwestern ran the ball, kept some drives going, but only got to the end zone one time. Just what's your take on all of that frenzy going on right now, and just your take on Ohio State's running game in particular?
Well, I always go back to one word. It's expectations are out of control. At Florida that happened. We started winning a lot of games, and I remember we win by 14, and we beat Tennessee by 14 one time, and I walked in, and it was the media, even our players, and and me, the staff, the expectations are so high. Like, what the heck happened? Like, wait a minute, what? You just beat Tennessee by 14 points, and then Ohio State you just said it. It was a quagmire. It was a mess, and they took care of the ball. They ran for 200 yards. A quarterback, I got news. Quarterbacks got to get. I don't know any other way to run the football consistently when they know you're going to run. If they know you're going to run, they can stop the run. How? Sheer numbers. They can. That's why it's so hard to run in the red zone. There's always going to be one free defender, sometimes two.
Yeah.
And you can stop the run game unless the quarterback's involved. If he's that way, if the quarterback's involved, you eliminate one. The one play we call it Bible, actually, the one he ran down the right sideline there that C.J. Stroud ran. That they read the end. The tight end went around it. Did a great job, and he went 50, 60 yards down the field. If we have a weather day against the Wolverines, that has to happen, or I don't know if he can win. Because the run game, once again, I'm going to say it again, you can stop the run game. And so I thought Ohio State showed grit. Northwestern, I've been there. We in 2013.
Yep.
It was a big rain delay. Now, Northwestern had a really good team then. I think they were top 15.
Yeah.
Top 20, if I remember right. I think game day was there. And we had to fight and claw and scratch. I remember walking out there. The field was sopping wet. The grass came over the top of my shoes, and I thought, oh, no. And we were in a fight. And that happens. But the bottom line is it goes in the left hand of the column. We won, and it's onward.
I was going to say, you guys got one out of the rough there, as you said, as you described that grass.
Got one out of the rough.
Yeah, got to get that. Yeah, got to whack at it. Notre Dame beats Clemson. Could you feel? I like to get your feel on these things because you've been on those sidelines, man, in big games, both winning most of the time, but getting beat a few times. But Notre Dame, could you feel almost the relief for Marcus Freeman and his staff, but Marcus Freeman in particular, to get that, after a really creaky start? I mean, obviously they get beat by Ohio State in the opener, but they go and get beat by Marshall. They get beat by Stanford, and everybody's really, wow, redressing this Marcus Freeman hire. And then they thumped Clemson, which had been in the running for college football playoff, obviously, maybe overrated, like you and I talked about a week ago. But could you feel his relief?
Of course, and I love Marcus Freeman. I think he's part of the Jim Tressel, Luke Fickell tree. He's a Buckeye. He handles himself with class. He's a guy that I don't know him that well. I've spoken to him a few times, but I called that one on Big Noon that I thought Notre Dame would win that game. I think they're getting better and better and better. Whenever there's coaching transition, it takes a minute. That happens everywhere. They had some real, they were in quicksand for a while, and he brought them through it, him and his staff. And so now the other side, Clemson, they're not, Dabo Swinney's built such a good program. They're not used to that. And that was a beating. That was, I watched most of that game, and that was A to Z. Every phase, Notre Dame, special teams were outstanding. Offense, defense, they controlled the line of scrimmage, controlled the ball. So that was a huge win, obviously, for Marcus Freeman. Now, Lou Holtz used to always say, this is the time to coach them hard. This is the time people make mistakes. I've made mistakes, and Lou Holtz would always say it best: when you lose a game, that's not the time to, grind on them.
Yeah.
When you win, when you got their attention, that's the time to grind on them. And so I'm hoping that's going on in South Bend because they can finish strong and then go for a great future for him.
What do you think's going on in Tuscaloosa, T-Town, at this moment, this week? You remember back in 2017, you guys got beat by Oklahoma and Baker Mayfield when he planted the flag. He came back, got on a run, and then y'all got thumped at Iowa. And I tell you, I was one of the many that were thinking, wow, there could be another one or two losses in this season for you guys. But you were able to, you coaches, y'all were able to right the ship. Y'all won out. Y'all ended up going to the Cotton Bowl. You won the Big Ten championship. You ended up going to the Cotton Bowl and beating a good USC team with Sam Darnold. Is that Nick Saban's challenge right now? How do you keep in this modern era college football playoff or bust and college football playoff championship or bust? How do you keep your teams, attention? You were just talking about it a minute ago about after win, you grind them hard. What do you do now if you're Nick Saban after that loss to LSU?
A great coach, obviously, uncharted waters a little bit for the past decade, probably. But I want to throw this out for everybody to think about too. They lost at Tennessee and lost at LSU at night. I'm saying there's no other team in the country who won those games. I know that's a bold statement.
Yeah.
But you look at the Wolverines, you look at Ohio State, look at Georgia, look at TCU. I guess those are the top four right now. I'm saying all four teams lose at least one of those games. So before everybody hits the panic button, in Tuscaloosa, they went to Tennessee at night, and it was a very close game, and they lost. They went down and went overtime at LSU. I've been in those stadiums. Other than Penn State, those are the most difficult stadiums in the country to play. So, he has an issue, and the issue is you're going to start hearing about opt-outs, and when your only acceptable course is a national championship, and that's taken from you, which I don't necessarily think it should be. I see TCU number 4 in the country, and I see other teams, and we're going to see how this thing shakes out. But I'm going to say again, I don't believe any team in America would have won both those games. Wow. And I know that's a bold statement. Matter of fact, I'll say this: I know none of those teams would have won both games.
Wow.
So it is what it is.
Yeah, it is what it is. Road trips, man. Ohio State had one this past week, like we just talked about. I mean, the road is the real deal.
That's not the same.
Oh, I know.
That's not the.
Wait a minute. You mean Dice Stadium, Ryan Field is not the same as Death Valley? Even with the wind blowing?
No, I don't care if there's a 6 feet of snow. Not the same.
Yeah. I said, Northwestern even got the 12th woman, Mother Nature, on their side and still couldn't do it, But hey, let's talk about that too, though. TCU at Texas this week. You were at TCU. You did you just get to feel the ambiance and the sense of being in a state of the middle of the state of Texas for a fan base that's really backing their team now in TCU, but now TCU plays at Texas this week. You got to see TCU up close and personal. Are they the real deal? Are they getting by the skin of their teeth and big plays? Max Dugan pulling plays out of his hip pocket. Can they continue this? I mean, what's your take on them? They're number 4 in the latest college football playoff rankings.
Yeah, Sonny Dykes, I have always liked him. We actually coached against him when he was at Cal. He had Jared Goff. I liked his father. I knew his father. I just got a lot of respect for him. TCU, Gary Patterson was a coach. I just always had great respect. I think it's a great job because you have as good a high school football, maybe the best, within a 100-mile radius of your campus. And we never missed on a Texas player. Think about the players that went through Ohio State. They were all great kids. They were all good students, and they were all come from good families, and they were tough. The J.K. Dobbins, Akuda, Baron Browning. I mean, just tough, good players. So I think they're a really good team. I don't think they have to play much better on defense. I just mentioned Alabama going to LSU and going to Tennessee. TCU won't survive that. And I'm not being disrespectful. I really think TCU is a great team. But you have to be, as you get to the championship time, which is now, you have to be balanced. You can't have one side of the ball that's really exceptional, one side that's not exceptional, or you'll get beat. I think this is going to be a great game. Gary Patterson kind of owned Texas.
Yeah.
So this is going to be at Texas. This will be a great atmosphere because Texas is coming on strong as well. But TCU is a really, really good team, a great team. But I don't know if they're a playoff team.
All right. You had to, before we get to the checkmate moment, you had to be impressed with the way Georgia jumped on Tennessee to kind of, at the beginning of that game, to kind of leave no doubt that you're playing between the hedges, Sanford Stadium. We're still number 1. As I'm sure Georgia was trying to proclaim to everybody, even though there were doubts out there. Obviously, they were number 3 in the college football playoff rankings a week ago. Now they're number 1. What do you see about Georgia? It looks like a team prepared to defend its national championship. What's your take on that?
I think Kirby Smart's a coach of the year candidate. We've been there. When you win a national title, it's hard, man. Everything's hard. And he's, the SEC schedule, the fact they, I believe, lost 15 players in the NFL draft.
Yeah.
And they're playing, they smoked Tennessee, and I had Tennessee as a playoff team. I still think Tennessee might be in the mix for that playoff spot, but I think he's a Coach of the Year candidate. His coaching staff should be commended. And the quarterback, Stetson Bennett, is the most underrated player in America, especially with his legs. Some scramble for a touchdown. So they are the number one team in America.
All right. Last thing, let's get to your checkmate moment here. At least the one I think you ought to be talking about is LSU has suddenly become the fly in the ointment of the SEC. I mean, Brian Kelly, had a couple of tough losses earlier in the year, but now all of a sudden they knock off Alabama. And they knock off Alabama. See, I'm not a fan of this. We've talked about this moment, these kind of moments before. I'm a fan of if the other team has scored a touchdown in overtime and kicked the extra point, and you score a touchdown in overtime and kick the extra point, until you're forced to go for two, I believe you stay in the game. I mean, meaning kick that extra point. But we saw how that blew up in their face against, what was it, Florida State in the opener this year. I'm talking about for LSU. That decision to go for the 2-point conversion and end it there. Tell me about a coach standing on the sideline and you make that call. The second you make that call, boom, this is it. I mean, I would think your rear end starts to pucker, your guts start to roll, your brain, I don't know. Put me in that situation. You've been there. Put me in that situation where the game is on the line. That one play is going to decide not just the result of a game, but the result probably of a season, a feel-good season. Put me there, and then to see it, come to fruition, how that makes you feel.
Well, I've always been a believer in preparation, and you prepare for that moment mentally as a coach. If you're in that situation, I would always list I would actually call it checkmate moment. The checkmate moments are when you take analytics and you throw it away and you go with your gut. And I would always list the reasons why. First of all, talent. If the other team's more talented than you are and you have a chance to end the game, just like when you're playing chess, you have a chance to checkmate it, do it. You got to do it, because the longer it goes, eventually talent wins. So take it. Number two is home or away. He was home. Usually if you're away, you try to end it as fast as you can, because once again, the crowd and everything gets involved. So it's talent, home or away, and then momentum. If you have that team on the heels and you're pushing them around a little bit, 3 yards doesn't seem as bad as 3 yards when you're facing a team you can't get an inch.
Yeah.
And so those three things and I'd write them down. The other ones were I'd have little bullet points like injuries. Are we healthy? I remember going, I ran a fake punt against Georgia one year in the fourth quarter, and everybody said, "You're nuts. Why'd you do that?" It's because I knew my linebacker had an ankle sprain. My safety had a deep thigh contusion that he had about another 2 series. We were done. And we're winning 14-10. And I just remember looking down on my sheet that I always carried with me, and I saw injuries. And I said, oh, man. So I called a fake punt. We got it, and we ended the game. Because if we had to go back on defense, I think we lose that game.
Yeah.
So Brian Kelly's not a good coach, a great coach, winningest coach in Notre Dame history.
Yeah.
You knew at some point if those players would buy into his, I'm sure, a little bit different style. But checkmate moments, I think for the viewer and for listeners, a guy like Brian Kelly's rehearsed that in his mind. That he's not some rookie coach of Bowling Green like I was, and hey, let's try this.
Yeah.
Once you've been through the ringer a few times, in your mind, you have to be prepared for the blowback in case it doesn't work. And I'll say the last thing about this. I saw his post-game speech, and I did that every year with our players. I said, don't be, understand we're aggressive here. It's a little bit like we went for it on 4th down against the team up north in the second overtime. Analytics says kick the ball. But I knew that, that we're facing one of the best teams in the country. Let's end this thing right here. I mean, if we can't get a yard, then we don't deserve to win this game anyway. So there's a lot of variables involved, but you try to rehearse it in your mind too.
Yeah, but as you stand there and you watch the play unfold, what's in your gut? Are your guts rolling? What are they doing?
Yeah,
it's kind of like facing the firing squad a little bit. Maybe they'll miss. Go ahead now.
Yeah, I tell people someday when you pass away, they do an autopsy on you. I know this is a pretty graphic way of looking at it, but they're going to look and say, my God, what happened to this guy? Oh, that must be the 2016 overtime against the Wolverines. That must be the, national champ. That must be the 4th down against, that was the decision to go for 2 against Alabama.
Yeah.
And well, it's everything you said. And I remember my mouth would go completely dry and my heart would start racing in those situations. But I would try to, you got to focus on the task at hand, and let's make the right decision for your team.
Yeah. Well, Urban Meyer, appreciate you joining me again, man, on Urban's Take. And let's do this again next week as you guys especially Fox Big Noon. Y'all are going to be following the next big game in the country, Ohio State versus Michigan. It looks like it's a collision course, but like you said, Michigan beware Illinois, Ohio State beware, Indiana, but definitely that trip to Maryland next week. I mean, this collision still has to jump some hurdles, doesn't it?
It does. I have so much confidence. I think both coaches are excellent, that they're going to take. I think Ohio State's that talented. I don't think talent-wise it's people are even close. It's just the weather and ability. I think the ability to run the ball and keep CJ involved in the run game.
Gotcha. Well, ladies and gentlemen, college football fans, until next week for Urban's Take, we'll see you then.